I wanted to make a quick video on how is it that the housing market, but not the housing market, sorry, the international student experience, how did it get so worse or so bad in Canada? And how did we come to this? So, just a quick recap. Canada, starting in 2010, decided that they want to be a big player in the education market, and they want to target international students to come to Canada and study here, and perhaps they would like to stay here and work here and build families here, build houses here, start families here, and basically settle down. That was the goal. And prior to 2010, this had worked out quite well for Canada. And one thing I want to mention is that prior to 2010, they were targeting mainly, and obviously this is all anecdotal, and I don't have much evidence to back this, but pretty much they were targeting, middle class and upper class folks from all over the world, pretty much. Well, I should say all over the world. I should say China, India, Middle East, Pakistan, and so forth. So that was, but then in 2010, and by the way, like when I say 2010, you may be thinking Stephen Harper's government. Yes, Stephen Harper's government, and as well as the Conservatives and the Liberals, they both have pretty much the same, maybe not the same approach, but they both agree that we need to develop our international student market, our education industry. So anyways, the problem started occurring in 2015 after Justin Trudeau of the Liberals was elected, and he is a Liberal and he's more pro-immigration. So he did in fact increase the number of immigrants that can be allowed in Canada, but also it's around the same time it's around the same time that the international student numbers really started going up in Canada. But even up until 2018, they were not exponentially higher. It's around 2018 when Ontario elected a Conservative Premier Doug Ford. Rob Ford was his brother, late Rob Ford. Doug Ford, they elected Doug Ford, and Doug Ford, his strategy, his plan was to basically use international students to fund the universities and colleges here in Ontario. So what he said was, every year prior to 2018, the government of Ontario would be funding or partially funding universities and colleges in Canada. He came in, he basically slashed all those fundings, but at the same time, he let all these institutions, colleges, universities to invite students to study and make up for that funding. So that's how Canada got hooked on the international student market. It's kind of like it was intentional. It was by design. I'm pretty sure they knew what the consequences would be. But if you know anything about Canada, unfortunately, there's just too many bodies, too many groups, too many governments, and they don't really coordinate among each other. They don't talk to each other. So you can see that here, that's what happened clearly. The government of Ontario, they cut funding. Colleges, universities, they accepted like enormous amount of students, and at the same time the government of Ontario, federal government, they let a lot of those students in, and all these students came in. We already had a housing crisis before 2018, and they came in and they basically, that introduction basically exacerbated the housing situation in Canada. And not just the housing situation, but the job market is also quite weak. everything is expensive. If you want to go buy a car, it's expensive. And that, I know after COVID there was a supply chain issue and all that, but even after that, there's just too much demand for cars, for healthcare, for groceries, for all these things, for housing, of course. And they did not really plan for that. And basically, university colleges, they're saying, hey, we don't care. Like, you're the ones approving visas. If you don't think we can handle all these students, then why are you giving them visas? And at the same time, the government is like, hey, like, this is your responsibility, and you should do your checks, and you can't just allow all these students to come in and they're not. And by the way, one thing I forgot, like, a lot of these students, and their intention is to study and then ultimately to find work in Canada and get the PR and get the nationality. That's the ultimate goal. And that's fair. That's totally fair. People prior to 2018 have done that. But in this situation, Canadian government is saying, like, all these colleges, they're acting in bad faith. They're just here to make money, and they are handing out diplomas like it's nothing, really. And a lot of the students, they're working and like long hours, many hours, and they don't even show up to the classes, and they still end up getting diplomas. So everyone is, pointing fingers at each other, and it's just like a horrible situation for students, for Canadians in general. And all of it could have been avoided if we had planned things better, if we had managed things more prudently. And like, it just goes to show, like, Doug Ford, he was a populist MP, populist premier. He is a populist premier. He's the man of the people. He's been elected 2 times, but obviously they don't think things through. They want to cut funding to the government. Maybe they want to cut taxes, but now we have a situation where we've got a mess. And so anyways, just recently, Canadian government, they came out with some new rules, and they're cutting back on student visas, and they're capping how many students can come to Ontario, and I think Ontario and BC, because these are the 2 provinces where the situation is extremely bad. And and for international students, they made it harder for them to become Canadian nationals. So let's see. This does not mean that the Canadian education industry will just cease to exist, but it definitely means that people or students who are on the lower end, who are not as financially well off, will not be able to make it to Canada. And so I think this whole experience has just been an unpleasant experience, to say the least. And we wasted a lot of years. I know the housing market, like, it's everyone's dream to buy a house. It's not just about shelter anymore. It's about status now. It's also about building a family. If you want to have a family, you want to have space. Condos in Toronto and in other cities are not really made for families. A lot of them are like luxury condos, and it's just like everything just sucks, honestly. So anyways, that's how we got here. It just didn't happen overnight, and this is a prime example of why government planning matters, why you need good policymakers in the offices, why you always need to think for long term.